This lesson is object-oriented programming in C#. The objectives for this lesson are to learn the difference between class and object, see the different methods of instantiating a class, understand the various ways to create properties, create methods to manipulate property data, and introduction to namespaces. So what is a class? A class is a template that defines behavior of an object at runtime. A class contains definitions of properties, which hold data, methods that kind of affect that data, do things with that data, or events. These are reactions to things that occur. Now, a blueprint of a house is a class. You can't live in a blueprint, so that's the template that defines a house. So what's an object? Well, an object is simply an instance of a class. That's something that you can interact with. Right? The class defines all these behaviors and the data. The object is the logical entity that you program against. So the house that's built from the blueprint, that's an object. You can live in a house. Now with each object, you can set properties, get properties, you can call methods, you can respond to, and you can raise events. Once you create a class, you then can create objects from that class. To do that, you do what's called instantiate the object. You're going to create and set aside memory for that object. And we use the new keyword to instantiate the object. And there's 3 different ways that you can accomplish this. The first method, simply declare the class name, product, and then give it a variable name. So just like we do an int or a decimal, you use the name of the class and then a variable name. And then you can say entity equals new product. The second method is do it all on one line. Product entity equals new product. And you always put an open close parenthesis after these things. And then method 3, which is newer in .NET 6 and later, is to say product entity equals new open close parenthesis. But any 3 of these methods work just fine. Now properties are very important to classes. Classes define the property names, and that describes the data an object contains. And we can get and we can set the values of those properties on the individual objects at runtime. Now each object maintains its own data storage and memory. For example, product entity equals new. We've created a new instance of an object, so it's now sitting in memory somewhere. We can now set the name property on that product class, in this case the object at runtime, to the value bicycle, for instance. So that is setting the property. And then we can get the property and display it on the console by doing entity.name. So everything is className.method or className.property. So methods are simply procedures that are defined by the class. And they can either return a value or not. So let's take another instance where we create product entity equals new. So we've created an instance of the product class in memory. We set the entity.name, for instance, and we would probably set a lot of other properties. And then we might call a method used to insert a product into a table, for instance. So you might do entity.insert open close parenthesis. Now you'll always know the difference between a method and a property, because a property you don't put the open close parenthesis after. To call a method, you must do the open close parenthesis. Another important piece of object-oriented is what are called namespaces. Now, namespaces are related types, related classes, that are grouped into one namespace. This makes them easily searched and referenced. I like to think of it like you walk into a bookstore and you want to find a travel book. Well, you look for the travel section, or you want to find something on computer programming, so you go to the computer programming section. Computer programming and travel are your namespaces, and they contain the books that are related to those, just like a namespace contains all those classes that are very similar. So the first part of the name up to the final dot is the namespace name. The final portion is the class name. So for example, system.windows.forms. That's the namespace piece. And then after that last dot is the name of the class, in this case, form. Another very important piece of object-oriented programming is called inheritance. Now, inheritance allows one class to use all the properties and methods of another class. The new class can add additional properties and methods, and that new class can override methods. They can replace functionality completely of the original method, or it may augment the functionality of the original method. Now, for example, a person class might have a first name and a last name property. An employee can inherit from the person class and can add on a salary property, and then might add on some additional methods like calculate salary or give raise. Inheritance, very important to object-oriented programming.